Welcome back to another video here on YouTube video platform. So one thing we like to do here on this channel every once in a while is make a tier list video. I've done a lot of different topics like guitar brands and colors and ugly guitars, but I've been wanting to do a tier list video on guitar headstocks. I feel like the headstock of a guitar is a pretty underrated part of what makes a guitar overall aesthetically pleasing or not. So we're gonna jump in and rank some guitar headstocks. So I definitely don't have every headstock ever, because if I did, this video would be like a million years long, but I have a lot of the main notable ones, starting with the Martin headstock. Now obviously Martin is one of the most legendary guitar companies ever. I'm gonna put a hat on, honestly. I feel like I need a hat on. But I'm gonna be the first to say that the Martin headstock is extremely basic. It's literally just a rectangle, but that also doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this one at a B tier. Okay, next up we have the PRS headstock. Now I have personally always kind of been a hater of the PRS headstock. I feel like it doesn't really look very good. It's a little bit too stubby for the size of the tuners. Also, I just feel like it's a little bit too pointy and angular for the type of guitars that PRS makes. They're making like old man blues lawyer guitars with like almost a metal guitar headstock. I feel like it just doesn't fit. So I'm going with Paul Reed Smith headstock, D tier. I know it's gonna upset some people, but that's where I'm putting it. Next up, we got the Dean headstock. Now obviously, like most of these companies, they have a few different headstocks that they'll use on different guitars, but this particular one that's kind of like a V shape, really horrendous. One of my least favorite headstocks maybe ever. Personally would never buy a guitar with this headstock, so we're going F tier. Speaking of which, one of my least favorite headstocks ever created, a true and utter atrocity, is the Fender Electric 12 headstock. Kind of looks like a sock, kind of looks like a hockey stick, depending on your perception. My perception is that I think it looks like so we're going F tier. I've always been a really big fan of Fender, up until recently, but that is the one thing I will always hate on Fender for, is that headstock right there. Okay, next up we have the Ernie Ball Music Man headstock. To be Franklin, I'm really not a big fan of these guitars in the first place. I feel like they're just a little bit too rounded and bulbous generally, which is kind of the same complaint that I have about the headstock. It's just a little bit too short and small and rounded. Not a huge fan of it. For some reason, it gives me the same sort of uneasy, disjointed feeling the PRS headstock gives me. So fittingly, we're gonna put it in D tier as well. Okay, next up we have kind of like the OG Epiphone headstock, where the corners are kind of like rounded off. What you're probably used to seeing is this kind of like mustache, but you can see it has the pointed corners here. But I really like the rounded corner one. I feel like it's a little bit more artful. It just makes it seem a little bit more classy and upscale, I guess, if that makes sense. I think this is a really good headstock, so we're going A tier. Alright, next up we have the classic Fender Telecaster headstock. Now this one has a pretty big caveat in which how much I like the headstock really depends on the decal that they put on it. Because I really hate the Tele headstocks where it's just like sprawled across there so haphazardly. There's been a few times where I've seen the decal on a Tele and I'm like, is this a fake? Like, this looks so bad, so unbelievably bad. But then you have something like this, the Squier Bullet, and honestly, I love the way this looks. They got the little star in there, which is so cool, and also the decal is just very nicely put on, evenly spaced out. I want to go A tier, but for the reason of the inconsistency, I'm gonna put it in B tier. Alright, now we have the D'Angelico headstock. I've always really loved these, and D'Angelico's guitars in general I think are great. Just very ornate and artful, kind of regal looking. So I feel like this one's definitely got to be an S tier. Okay, next up we got the Danelectro headstock. Danelectro guitars, I think they're hit or miss. They have some really ugly guitars and also some really cool ones. The headstock kind of leaves something to be desired. It's really simple. It's also very thin and skinny, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it kind of looks like a paddle or an oar or something. It's not the worst thing ever, but it's kind of mid, as the kids might say. So we're going C tier. Anyways, next up we have the ESP LTD headstock. Never been a fan of these guitars much in the first place. People go really crazy for these like super sharp angular headstocks. I don't know why. I just don't think it looks good, but I'm also not the target demographic of these sort of guitars. I'm gonna go ahead and go D tier though. Alright, next up we have the big chunky CBS era Fender headstock. Honestly, a lot of the time I find myself switching back and forth whether I like the CBS headstock or the skinny headstock better. If you ask me in like a month from now, my answer would probably be different, but I think right now the way I'm feeling is CBS headstock is A tier, and then the skinny kind of normal Fender headstock, I like it more right now because it fits on so many more of their classic guitars like the Jaguar and Jazzmaster, and it just has a little bit more of like a sleek, streamlined kind of look to it, so we're gonna go ahead and put this bad boy in S tier. Okay, next up we got the Gibson Explorer headstock. Now if I'm being honest, I've never been a big Gibson guy. I'm not a huge fan of their guitars, but I'll give them credit, they definitely used to experiment quite a lot back in the day. For better or worse. A lot of the time for worse. The Explorer headstock is not the most atrocious of their creations though, I will say. I think it would be much better if instead of putting the logo on the end of the headstock, they just put it underneath the tuners. I think that would look a lot better. They could probably reshape it so it's a little bit more visually appealing. But we're just gonna go ahead and go C tier, because I don't think it's D tier worthy, but it's definitely not B tier worthy. Speaking of Gibson, next up we have the Flying V headstock. Now, I don't like the Flying V as a guitar itself, but I do think that this headstock is pretty cool. I didn't used to like it very much, but it has kind of grown on me. If I was factoring in the guitar here, this would be much lower, but I think I'm actually gonna put this one at B tier. Next up we have the No headstock from all the various companies that decide to do that. Like Steinberger and Strandberg and whatever other Berg names. It kind of just looks like a guitar amputee a little bit. Obviously this is an F tier. All right, next up we have the Guild headstock. Obviously they have a couple of different headstocks, but this is the one that has like the double bump thing in the middle. You can tell a few companies were kind of just like, okay, how can we make a Gibson headstock but like a little bit different? And that's kind of like clearly what they did here. I think we're just gonna go middle of the pack, C tier for this one. All right, next up we have the Old Faithful, the tried and true. I just called it the Hondo headstock, but I had a Harmony guitar that had the same kind of headstock, and I know there are other brands that use it too. It's like the classic headstock for when you're trying to make a copy of a Fender guitar, but you don't want to get sued. And honestly, even though I've probably owned more guitars with that headstock than any other guitar headstock, I'm probably gonna go ahead and go C tier for it. It's like the one thing I've never really liked about like any of the Hondo guitars that I have. This one's cool though. This red one has a matching headstock, which I think is sick, but this little bird beak thing is just not visually appealing. I feel like they definitely could have done a better job on that. Next up we got the Ibanez headstock. This is the one they use in like the Ibanez Geo and other various models. Is that a helicopter? Oh no, it's somebody mowing their lawn. Awesome. Anyways, the Ibanez headstock, not the worst, not the best. I feel like it's C tier worthy. Okay, another one that I don't like, and people always get mad at, is the Jackson headstock. Like I said, not a fan of the pointy headstock thing. I don't think it looks good. Jackson guitars in general, in my opinion, just kind of tend to look pretty tacky. I don't want to go and put it in F tier, because F tier is like the worst of the worst, but I feel like D tier is kind of where I'm at with that. All right, this next one, can't really see it because the picture's chopped off, but it's the Fender Katana headstock slash Fender, like just pointy headstock. They've used this only a couple times on a few different models of guitars. I didn't used to like this. When I first discovered this guitar, I was like, ew, that's gross. Why would they ever do that? But especially on the Katana, I get it. Like, it totally fits the overall vibe of the guitar. So it's grown on me quite a bit, and I really don't mind it now. So I'm gonna go ahead and go B tier with it. Okay, next up we have this Fender John 5 custom Telecaster headstock. Maybe one of the worst things I've ever seen. I don't know why they would ever do this. The shape of the headstock is bad, the tuner spacing is bad, pretty much everything's bad. It's just bad. It's a horrible, horrible headstock, and it's definitely deserving of F tier. Okay, next up, we got the classic Gibson. Okay, I don't think I need this anymore. We got the classic Gibson headstock, which I'm also including like the Epiphone headstock, which is just the same as this one. The mustache, the open book, whatever you want to call it. I feel like if I'm putting the Fender headstock in S tier, this one is also too classic to not go ahead and put it in S tier. Next up, we got another Gibson atrocity, which is the Gibson Modern headstock. One of the worst headstocks maybe ever created. I actually have no idea what they were thinking when they created this. It's genuinely baffling how a guitar headstock could possibly be this ugly, but lo and behold, here it is. F tier, easy. I think that one needs to be like permanently bottom of F tier. Okay, next up we got the Parker Fly. Parker Fly is a really cool guitar that was like way ahead of its time. It was made out of carbon fiber. They're pretty rare now because they don't make them anymore. I actually got to play one when I was at Carter Vintage Guitars in Nashville. It was pretty cool. I liked it a lot, and the main thing that a lot of people don't like about it is the headstock. I get it. I would understand why you wouldn't like the headstock. It looks very flimsy, looks kind of like a hockey stick. It's very thin, maybe like the thinnest headstock ever created. I don't have a problem with it. I actually like it, so I'm gonna go B tier. Next up, we got the Rickenbacker headstock. I love Rickenbacker guitars, but this headstock is like just kind of meh. It's not really anything crazy. So we're just gonna go ahead and put this like C tier, but high C tier. Maybe top of C tier. Second to last here, we have the Schecter headstock shape. Obviously, they have a few different shapes, but I think this is like the Schecter Diamond Series headstock shape. I don't like it for the exact same reason I don't like the PRS headstock. It's almost just like a mirror image flip of the PRS headstock with like slight differences in the shape. So we're gonna cozy it up right next to PRS in the D tier. And finally, last but not least, of course, is the Music Vox Space Ranger headstock. Overall, this guitar is really incredibly ugly, but the headstock is genuinely one of the worst things I've ever seen. I didn't even think it was real the first time I saw it. It kind of just looks like a mango or like some sort of giant bean. All I know is that it's going F tier. It's a tough race between the Modern and the Space Ranger, who is going to be bottom of F tier. It could really go either way. I'm fine with either one being at the bottom. But yeah, so I think that's pretty much going to do it for my tier list here. Let me see if I want to change anything. I have a lot of F, D, and C tier for this one. Am I just a hater? I feel like the top is like really sparse. I don't know. I guess I'm just a tough critic today on this one. But yeah, that pretty much is going to do it for my tier list. This is the completed full thing. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I'm sure you will. I'm sure I'll be hearing it down in the comments. Make sure to check out the playlist that I have of other tier list videos I've made. I've covered a lot of other topics, guitar colors and brands and guitar pedal knobs and weird other stuff like that. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate all of you, and I will see you all in the next video.